This is the last talk, so cheer up. There are many things to talk over together this evening. And I hope we shall have time for it. We haven't talked about freedom, about the whole sensory activity which is centered in the brain. We have not talked about the ending of fear and the pursuing of pleasure and the ending of sorrow and what it is. That world which has been so spoiled, love, and also a mind that's religious. Death, and again that much abused word, meditation. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And I hope we can do it by all of us thinking over, talking over together, not merely listening to the speaker. We began by saying yesterday also in the previous talks that there must be freedom from the known. And we're going to inquire together first, what do we mean by freedom? Whether man really wants freedom at all. Many volumes have been written about freedom, various revolutions that have been started to bring about freedom to man, ending up in terrible bureaucracy and so on. And also, whether on earth, here, living this life of conflict and misery and confusion, we can never have freedom. We think freedom exists when we have choice to move from place to place, from job to job, from one career to another. That gives us the impression that we are free. Free to choose, free will, and so on. And we should really inquire together, what is freedom? How vital it is in our life, whether we demand freedom, and when there is such disorder created, not only in this part of the world but elsewhere, each individual, each person thinking he's free to do what he likes, and so bringing about a great deal of disorder, chaos. So one must, will, if we could, together inquire, what is freedom? And also we'll inquire also into what is, if it is at all possible, to be free from the known. Is freedom associated with a restriction, with a bondage, with a concept with suffering? Is there a freedom totally independent, not associated with any cause or with any motive? Is there a freedom that is so complete, total? We only know freedom in a prison. Being imprisoned in a family with all the troubles of family, being in great deal of trouble, problem of one after another, and man is always saying to himself, I must be free from all this. So his idea of freedom is from something, from restraint, from pain, both physical and psychological, freedom from anxiety and so on and so on. Is not such freedom a reaction? If I am caught in great deal of trouble, I want to be free of it. And that freedom is an escape or a reaction from the trouble I am in. And for most of us, that's what kind of freedom we want. From something. Or being in something, having freedom there. Like a man in a prison, he's free in the prison. If you call that freedom. So, is there a freedom which is totally unrelated, which is absolute in the sense, and we are using the word absolute in the sense absolved, free from any causation, from any motive? And is it possible for a brain, for a human mind, the immense struggle, the conflicts, the miseries, the loneliness, can there be a freedom from all this, so completely away from this? And being so free, able to act rightly in the world. We're going to inquire into all that presently. And also, as we pointed out a few days ago and also yesterday, can the brain ever be free from knowledge, which is the process of recording? Right? When there is recording, any incident, experience, any accident, and so on, a word may be recorded. A word loaded with insult or flattery. A gesture. A look. All that is being recorded. And though that becomes knowledge, the known. And then the brain functions always within the known. That's what we are doing. And can there be freedom in the field of the known. I don't know if I'm making myself, if one is clear. To go on with all this? We carry a great burden of knowledge, of hurts, of insults, of various emotional, psychological reactions, various forms of experiences with their knowledge. Our brain is burdened with all that. Not only the academic knowledge, the knowledge which we acquire through mathematics and so on, but also the whole psychological world which is loaded with knowledge. They know. And as long as we are working in, as long as thought is working in that field, can there be freedom? And is freedom from the known? You understand, when we use the word known, all the psychological knowledge that one has acquired, all the various forms of emotional, intellectual gatherings which have become our knowledge, stored up in the brain. And as long as our action is limited to that, can there ever be freedom? I don't know if we are conveying on this at all. After all, we are always inquiring seriously, if we are at all serious, whether the past, which is the accumulated knowledge of mankind, which guides us, shapes us, which brings about action that's always limited. And therefore, being limited, such action will invariably cause conflict, misery, confusion, and so on. One is always asking if it is possible to be free of the known, both the psychological known and the gatherings that one has accumulated through experience. I wonder if we are meeting each other. Are we? Please, as we said from the beginning of these talks, we are exploring together, examining together. This is real cooperation in which there is no instruction, in which there is no passing of information, ideas. We are both of us looking into the problem, which is, can the brain ever be free from the known? Except in the world of technological world, You understand? That is, the knowledge how to read and write, how to speak a language. When you become an engineer, that you have accumulated a great deal of knowledge about mathematics, stress and strain. If you are a physicist, you have acquired knowledge through 200 or 300 years of experimentation, hypothesis, and so on. There, you need knowledge. One needs knowledge to talk in English, or whatever language one has. We're not talking of such knowledge. We are talking about the psychological knowledge which we have gathered. Can the brain ever be free of that? If it is not, we're always living in a very, very, very narrow circle. Our actions will invariably be limited, fragmented. Our actions will never be whole. So in asking this question, we're also asking, what is right action? Is there right action ever? Or must action always be limited? When we use the word right, one means whole, complete, not fragmented. That is, an action that is whole. Our action is based on thought. Thought being, as we pointed out, the accretion, the gathering of experience, knowledge, memory, and thought and action. This is how our brains work. And thought being limited, because knowledge is always limited, such action, born of thought, must always be incomplete, therefore fragmentary, and bringing about division, conflict. Right? I think this is fairly clear. Then what is right action? An action which is right under all circumstances, whether it's in the narrow limitations of a family, or social action, action in relationship, and so on. What is right action? Can that right action take place when there is the operation of thought? As we pointed out, I'll go into a little bit. As we pointed out yesterday, the computer can do almost anything we do. But the difference between the computer and the human being is basically freedom from the known. The computer can never be free, in the sense it has been programmed. It has accumulated a lot of knowledge, programmed by human beings. So, man has the capacity to be totally free. And the computer is not intelligent. So, what is the difference between the computer and the human mind? Is it intelligence? Then what is intelligence? You following me? What is intelligence? Is intelligence the capacity of the intellect which can discern, reason, logically or not logically, objectively, perhaps occasionally sanely? Is intellect, has the intellect capacity of intelligence? Or is intelligence something entirely different? Following all? Is intelligence matter of time? Please, time being accumulating knowledge, cleverness, capacity to think, and thought has its own activity which may be called intelligence. And is that intelligence? So what is intelligence? Are we waiting for the speaker to tell you? When you see a danger, physical danger, there is immediate response. Right? That response has been the result of previous conditioning. When you see a snake, cobra, there is instant response. And that response is the outcome of long tradition, but also the instinct to preserve the physical condition, that is self-preservation. That can also be called intelligence. But when we see psychological danger, right, we don't act instantly. For example, attachment, as we pointed out on several occasions, is corruption. Attachment to belief, to an idea, to a concept, to a conclusion. Attachment to a particular deity, attachment to husband, wife, attachment. One sees the danger of it. If one is alert, awake, see the complete, what are the consequences of attachment. And yet we go on. We can explain, argue, investigate, analyze. But that analysis, investigation, has very little value. So why is it the human brain does not act instantly and reject attachment altogether? You follow? The physical danger and psychological danger. Is that not lack of intelligence? I don't know if I'm following my... So, perception of psychological conflicts brought about through selfishness, see the danger of it, See what it does in our personal as well as public relationship. See what is happening in the world. See the consequences of all that. And yet we don't stop it. Is that a state of neuroticism? And therefore it is not intelligent. And also we must investigate much more deeply the question of intelligence. As we said, the computer can do almost anything that we do. And what is the difference between the computer and our brain? Then one is asking, what is intelligence? If intelligence is immediate perception of danger and action, then we are unintelligent. Right? I don't know if you... So, time as a factor of resolution of any problem is an act of unintelligence. And we're talking about psychological problems. Our minds, our brain is trained to solving mechanical problems. It hasn't faced the problem of our daily living and resolving it, like conflict. Not only within ourselves, but around us. We see the consequences of conflict, ultimately leading to war, and yet we don't act. Therefore, perception, which is seeing, comprehension of the whole movement of attachment, for example, and seeing the danger of it and ending it instantly. Such action is intelligence. Right? So, our psychological structure, which is far more important than the government laws, the superficial structures and of establishment, organizations, all that is overcome by our psychological demands. So, man has the capacity to have this intelligence, to have an insight into something and acting instantly. Can we do that? Is it possible for us to do that? Right? Which means, you see the nature of fear, how fear arises. Shall we go into that? What do you... All right, so let's go through it. In analyzing, I won't use that word. In examining, which is different from analyzing, let's be clear. Analysis implies there is an analyzer and something to be analyzed, right? I analyze my reactions. I analyze why I get hurt, which means the analyzer is different from that which he is analyzing. We are not analyzing. We are merely observing, which is entirely different. Observing the movement of fear. Please, we are not dividing ourselves into examiner and the examined, the thinker and the thought, but examining, looking, observing what is fear, right? Which is entirely different from the analysis of fear, right? I wonder if can we go on from there? What is fear? Which man throughout the ages has borne with, burden. These physical fears, which are natural, as we pointed out when you meet at Cobra, but we're talking about psychological fears. How they arise. Why? We haven't at all ended them. Why the brain is not free of psychological fears. And is it possible to be totally free of fear, psychologically? Is fear a movement of time? Right? Time being the future, the present, and the past. The past modifying itself in the present and going on. That is fear of being hurt psychologically. Right? And keeping that hurt, holding on to it. And building a wall of resistance around oneself, not to be hurt anymore, and therefore isolating oneself more and more and more, and so getting more and more hurt. Now we're asking that fear is caused by time. Right? I don't know if you understand. Or by thought. I am afraid I might lose my job. Though I have a job, I might lose it. That is the future, which is time. Or I have had pain psychologically, it might be repeated, and I'm afraid that it might come again. You follow? So, is thought the cause of fear? And thought is time. Thought is a material process, and time is also a material process. I wonder if you follow this. Right, sir? So, if thought is the movement of fear, then the problem is, can thought end or not record the hurt? You want to say? I wonder. Right, sir? The brain has recorded the hurt. The hurt is brought about because I have an image about myself, and you come and tread on it, and I get hurt. I, being the image which I have created about myself, right? and that image gets hurt. Now, not to record that hurt, which means not to have an image about myself at all. I wonder if are we moving together in this? Not accepting the explanation, but ending the image you have about yourself. Right? So, fear is a movement of thought as time. It is not how to stop thought, but it is rather not to record. I wonder, is that possible? Because our reactions are so quick. You call somebody an idiot, there is immediate response from him. So, can the brain record what is absolutely necessary to live in this world, but not record at all psychologically? You understand me? Please understand the question first. We must record technological knowledge, how to drive a car, language we use, and so on, so on, so on. But why should the psychological world, that is my image and all that, record at all? If we see the importance or the necessity or the danger of recording, and you don't act on that danger, you are either neurotic or totally unintelligent. That is, most of us are vain, proud about some footling thing or other, about our knowledge, our position, our capacity to argue. Pride of possession. Now, can that pride, which creates such extraordinary conflict between people, a form of ruthlessness, can that end? Which doesn't mean that we cultivate humility. You cannot cultivate humility. If you do, that is vanity. But to see that pride, the sense of, what pride is, you don't have to go into it. You see all the implications of it. At one glance, you can very simple. And end it instantly. In the same way, fear. So the brain is the psychological structure which is centered in the brain through sensations. That instant action frees the brain from the continuance of fear. I don't know if you're following all this. Are we meeting each other? Are we? Now wait a minute. We can test this out. Are you free of fear? Fear of public opinion? Fear of your parents? Fear of your father, your husband, wife? Fear of so many things. Which is, will you trim the tree of fear or go to the very root of fear? Fear of not following a guru. You understand? Fear of your gods. Fear of not doing the right thing, becoming respectable. You understand? Will you take one branch after another branch, or go to the very root of all fear, which is time and thought? Now, can we see that? Not an abstraction of it as an idea. Please do listen to this. Not as an idea, but see the fact of it, the actuality of it. Then if it is seeing the actuality, remain with that actuality. You understand? Not escaping from it, not suppressing it, not trying to overcome it. Just like watching a rock. Have you ever watched a rock? A boulder on the hillside? It doesn't move. But though it does its own vitality and so on, that doesn't matter. It doesn't move. So in that same way, watch, observe the whole movement of fear, watch it without any sense of deviation. Then one will find that fear goes away completely, psychologically. Or, put it on the other way, you have physical pain. Dentists or various forms of physical pain. That pain is recorded. And from that record, there is fear that it might occur again. Now, when you have pain, watch it, observe it. Don't say I must detach myself from all. Just watch the pain. And as you watch it, you alert. You'll understand, not just say I'm awful pain, all the rest of it. Watch pain. And it won't be recorded if you're watchful. So, fear, which is the movement of thought and time, which is essentially thought. Time is thought. It's a movement. Right? Time is movement. Thought is movement. And the thought is the origin of pain, of fear. Now, pleasure is a movement of thought also. The pleasure that you derive sexually, the imagination and all the rest of it, which is the movement of thought. At the moment of pleasure, you're not aware that you are pleasure. It is pleasure. I don't know if you've watched it, all this. Only a little later, thought says how lovely that was. So thought not only gives continuance to fear, but also to pleasure. Now, there's the other question, which is suffering. Because I must go on because the time is suffering. Man has suffered. You can see it right through the ages. War after war. Killing. How many mothers and wives and our parents have cried and cried. Suffering. And suffering when you lose something. Grief. When one loses a son, a daughter. Death. And all human beings know this. Whatever part of the world they live in. This is a common factor. Fear, pleasure, sorrow. And human beings have not been able to solve this. And sorrow. What is sorrow? Why do human beings go through tortures? And because they suffer, because they fear, and because they are pursuing pleasure, they invent gods. Right? Because we have not been able to solve it. These things, therefore, some outside agency, we hope, somehow by some great miracle or this or that, will solve our problems. This problem. And it has never been solved. Because the gods we have created the gods in our image. Not, God hasn't created in His image, us. If He has, He's a pretty poor God. No, don't laugh, sir. You're going to your temple next week. Fast for 40 days to go to some hill. So, fear is at the bottom of all this. Fear, which means you want security. And you hope gods will give it to you. And you jolly well know they can't. So you become a hypocrite. You lead double life, which is lack of utter integrity. So, what is suffering? Why? If I lose my son, my wife, my job, lose something in which I want to fulfill. This craze to fulfill. Fulfill what? Your desires, your ambitions. Right? So, when we talk about grief, why do human beings, we human beings who are the representative of all mankind, we went into that. We are mankind. We are not individuals. We talked about it the other day. Why? We have carried this burden. Is it a form of self-pity? not being able to face loneliness, not being able to stand alone, not having the capacity to look at things clearly and not get emotional about everything that we do. You understand? I lose my son, my brother, and I shed tears. Why? I'm attached to my son. Because I hope he'll be better than me and all that stuff. I'm attached to him. In that attachment, I have found comfort. I've found a sense of deep relationship. I've found a sense of not being isolated. But I am isolated. So I'm trying to escape from that isolation, that desperate loneliness. I can give many, many reasons for sorrow. But the explanation, the cause, will not dissolve your sorrow. What will dissolve is to see what actually is taking place. Not intellectually, not verbally, but with your heart look at things. Without the ending of sorrow, one cannot have love. Love is not pleasure. Love is not desire. And without love, life becomes what it has. Right? Then you will say, how am I to cultivate love? Or how am I to have that? To come upon that is a benediction which you cannot do anything about. All that you can do is to say what is not love. Your jealousy, your attachments, your ambitions, your greed, your beliefs, this self-centered activity. If that all that is not, the other is. But we don't want to be free of all that. We want all that plus the other. Right? And another question is death. Of which we are all frightened. This is really a very important question to go into. Whether we're young or old. What is death? Is there When there is love, is there death? Find out, sirs. Let's go into it. First of all, our consciousness is the common consciousness of mankind. Our consciousness is our beliefs, our dogmas, our superstitions, our pains, our sorrows, our fears, our gods, all the things that we have accumulated as knowledge, the experiences, the agony, the depression, the anxiety, the isolation, the loneliness, the sense of deep sorrow, not only personal sorrow, but the sorrow of mankind. War after war, war after war. The sorrow of divided nations. The Arab and the Jew, the Hindu and the Muslim, the communist and the capitalist, and so on, so on, so on. All that's part of our consciousness. Right? That is our consciousness. It is consciousness of mankind, not your consciousness of mine or his. Because we all have innumerable problems. We all seek certainty. We all want security. A place where we can be psychologically safe, undisturbed. This is the common lot of mankind, whether they live in Russia, China, America, or here. So our consciousness is the consciousness of the human. Yours is not your consciousness. We can go, it is so. There's no question. We can discuss endlessly to prove this. But it is so. Because you suffer. The man across the sea suffers. Whether that across the street be 1,000 miles or many, many miles, he suffers. So there is a common factor. You may have different color, different name, different profession, different tendencies, different culture. Here, your genes have inherited certain things, but basically this is what we are. And then, what is it to die? You understand my question? We think our consciousness is mine. Because the brain has been conditioned to think as though I was separate from everybody. And that separation as me has been cultivated by religions. Personal salvation, personal enlightenment. The Christian world, the Hindu world, everywhere this goes on. This is encouraged. And we accept it, and because we think there's great delight in being separate. Are we actually We are physically, with all its physical tendencies, because you have been placed under certain culture, hot climate, hot food, or this or that. But underneath we are all so much similar. And when we say, what happens to me when I die? It's a wrong question. And because we think that we are individuals, that is the question which put. What will happen to me when I die? And so, you want comfort in a belief of reincarnation or this or that. So, but when you see the fact that we are so alike, deeply, with so little affection, care, compassion, so death has no meaning when one realizes the fact that we are all total human beings. When I have time to go into this much more deeply, that's enough for the time. The other question is meditation. Meditation is unpremeditated art. Have you got it? Am I right? I said meditation is unpremeditated art. You can't prepare for meditation. There is no system, no method. The system, the method is premeditated. Somebody has thought he has meditated, invented a system, and we follow that, hoping something to get. So one has to find out what it is unpremeditated art, which is meditation. You understand, sir? I'll go into it. First of all, we can banish all the systems, all the methods, the postures, the breathing, forcing the mind, thought to control, and so on, so on. The controller is the controlled. Right? Thought creates the controller, and then the controller says, I must control thought in order to meditate, or rather, to meditate, which is so obviously silly. So, systems, methods, the idea of controlling thought, or thought identifying itself with something, a picture, an image, a symbol, and concentrating on that. I don't know if you're following all this. And there's this nonsensical, transcendental meditation, which is really a glorified racket, money-making racket. I know you won't like some of you who probably have done this. You pay to your somebody 10 rupees or 10,000 rupees, and if you get it straight from the horse's mouth, you pay all your income. And he gives you a mantra. I've been told a mantra means, the root meaning and the depth of that word means ponder, consider, meditate upon not becoming, and absorb, dissolve all self-centered activity. That's what that word apparently means. But look what it has become. You can repeat without going through giving off money to somebody to tell you the mantra. You can invent your own mantra. Coca-Cola. Yes, yes, sir. Don't laugh. You're all doing it. Or any other catchword. Repeat it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon, 20 minutes in the evening, and the rest of the day you can do all the mischief you want. Take a siesta. You understand a siesta, what it means? 20 minutes rest. Go to sleep. Put your brain to sleep by repeating. In the afternoon, so on, so on. So that's not meditation. So we're going to find out what is meditation. If you are really interested to find out. Not how to meditate. What is the depth and the beauty and the reality and the immense possibility of meditation. The word means ponder, to think over, be concerned. The dictionary meaning of that word. But the word is not the thing, right? The word meditation is not meditation. And why should one meditate at all? Is meditation separate from life? That is our daily living. The office, the family, the sex, the pursuit of ambition, daily life. Is that separate from meditation? Or is meditation part of life? You understand? You understand my question? Part of life. If it is separate and you meditate in order to live better life, in order to be better, follow? Then you are imposing certain concepts on actuality, certain experience of others, essentially of others, on what you think should happen. Now, if you can deny all that, do you understand? Please, this is very serious what we're talking about, unless you are really very serious to go into it, don't play with it. It is to deny everything that man has thought about meditation. About silence, about truth, about eternity, whether there is a timeless state and so on. To be free of other people's knowledge completely. And that goes very, very far. That is, to deny your gods, your sacred books, your tradition, your beliefs, everything wiped away, because you understand they are the result of thought. Which means you're totally, psychologically not dependent on anything. Which means you are free of fear. No longer touched by sorrow. Which doesn't mean that you become hard, bitter, cruel. And without love and compassion, there is no meditation. So life, living every day in this world, which is corrupt beyond words, which is immoral, destructive, without a sense, lack of integrity, living in this world, surrounded by all this. To have that sense of total freedom, which is absolute freedom. Because you have denied everything that man has thought out, except technological world. I don't have to repeat that over and over again. Because then you are the mind, then you enter into quite a different dimension, which is the mind. Not you enter, there is the mind. Mind is entirely different from the brain. And that mind cannot be understood or known or perceived unless the brain, with all its sensory responses, is understood. That is, to see something, see the seed, the sea, the sheet of water, or anything of nature, with all your senses. with all your senses, not merely with your eyes or hear one thing, with all your senses. When you perceive with all your senses, there is no recording. There is no I. It's only when we perceive something partially, then the partial thing creates the me which is partial. So, when the brain is totally free from all accumulated psychological knowledge, then there is the mind. I won't go into that. Then that becomes a theory. You understand? Unless one has done all this, actually, you can test it out. You can see it in your daily life. If that is not tested out in daily life, it is not worth it. So when there is this absolute denial of all the psychological accumulation, then the mind, when the brain becomes very quiet, it hasn't to be induced to be quiet. Then illumination is not an experience. Illumination means to see things clearly as they are and to go beyond them. And in our lives there is very little beauty. Not the beauty of form, actual beauty in our life. And that beauty cannot exist without love. And when there is love and compassion, it has its own intelligence. That intelligence acts, which is whole, which is right action. All this is meditation. And there is immense beauty in it. Great sense of aesthetic appreciation and the perception of the world. And in that there is great benediction, not from your gods, but the benediction of living a life which is whole. It says.